If you're hearing this, it means I didn't make it out. But maybe you will. Just don't look too close. You might not survive what you're about to hear. So before you feel like the mystery needs to be solved right away, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soft noise, and let's get started on tonight's mystery. It began under a false floor in the archives of Site 42. Most people don't even know that Site 42 has a sub-basement. Fewer still know about the fourth door in the server corridor that doesn't show up on blueprints. I didn't go down there looking for anything forbidden, just some case files on SCP for a debrief. But the filing cabinet I pulled open had no files. Just air, then a drop, then a creak. The ground gave way like it had been waiting for someone, and I fell through darkness that didn't echo. The room I landed in had no lights, no temperature, no movement. Just a thin circle of faint bioluminescence from fungus clinging to stone. In the middle of it was a book, black leather, warped by time and something wetter. It felt warm in my hands, alive. Almost. I should have left it, but the minute I touched it, something inside me whispered, "You already opened it." The handwriting wasn't Foundation issue. It was cramped, frantic, veering between Latin, Greek, English, and symbols I couldn't identify. The title page had no title, just 5 words burned into the parchment with something metallic and red, rituals that always complete themselves. As I turned the pages, my breath slowed. The margins were filled with notes, some in the same hand, others clearly added later. One note circled in ink read, "Tested. It worked. God help me," and beneath it, a redacted SCP case number I recognized. Barely. It had been pulled from the system 5 years ago after a containment breach. The ritual it described involved something called the door without a room. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed at my terminal, scanning every page I could into a quarantine drive. Each ritual had instructions, timings, tools, ingredients, consequences. The ones I read didn't just describe effects, they described responses. As if the rituals themselves reacted to the person performing them. Some things aren't meant to be understood, only avoided. That was written in careful block letters at the top of the journal's final page. But that wasn't the end. There was something taped inside the back cover, an old mini-tape recorder. With a dead battery. When I took it apart, I found something worse. One of the internal chips was labeled with the Foundation R&D asset tag. Whoever had documented these rituals had access to Foundation tech, clearance level 4 at minimum. Possibly higher. I took the recorder to Tech Lab C and asked an engineer I trust to help me get it working. We had to cannibalize 3 devices to patch the audio, but the results were chilling. The voice was trembling. Male, mid-40s. He whispered the first ritual line by line, and at one point gasped out, "It's already here." I didn't even open the door yet. The final 10 seconds were just wet breathing and a sharp, dragging sound. Occasionally, the radio at Site 13 picks up voices, in extinct languages. That phenomenon had been dismissed by a half-dozen junior researchers. They claimed signal bounce, software malfunction, or hoax. But this voice didn't need translation. It didn't ask to be understood. It asked to be obeyed. I brought the journal to my supervisor. She stared at it, then at me, then asked me to leave the room. When I came back 5 minutes later, the journal was gone. She claimed I was overworked, suggested I take leave. I asked if the footage in Archive Sub 4 would show me falling through the floor. She said there is no Archive Sub 4. I submitted a formal request for SCP designation cross-referencing the ritual title. The request was marked, invalid syntax. That doesn't happen. Even false flags return something. That night, I dreamt of a door, floating in space. No hinges, just a handle, and it was slowly turning. Some senior researchers argue that SCP-3999 is not an entity but a narrative instability event. That sentence was in one of the Foundation's most controversial white papers on ritualistic anomalies. I used to think it was just a metaphor. But now I wonder, what if these rituals write themselves into reality the moment you read them? When I woke, there was a single page on my nightstand. From the journal, one I didn't remember scanning. It was the first ritual. And in the bottom right corner, someone had drawn a door. It was slightly open. I stared at the page for nearly an hour, memorizing every inked stroke. It wasn't just a door, there was something behind it. You could feel it, even in the sketch. The ritual's name was written in smeared charcoal, to find that which should remain lost. Below the name were the steps. Choose a location that contains at least 3 doors. At exactly 3:33 a.m., open and close each door in a counterclockwise pattern. Repeat the following phrase between each door. I know you are there. I will let you in. After completing the cycle, stand completely still in the center of the room. Do not speak. Do not blink. Wait. If a new door appears, do not open it immediately. When you hear knocking, open it. The consequences, scribbled at the bottom, were fragmented, voice loss, spatial disorientation, persistent hallucination, entity transfer. The rest had been burned away. I wasn't going to do it. I swear to God, I wasn't, but you start to feel like something wants to be let in. Not by everyone, just by you. And when you're the only one who's seen the truth, the weight of it begins to bend your sense of self. Like gravity, curiosity doesn't kill, it invites something that does. I waited 3 nights, rationalized, bargained. On the 4th, I brought a camera, a mic, and 2 backup recorders to an old Foundation safehouse. It had been decommissioned in 2002 and had 3 doors in a small upstairs hallway. Perfect. At 3:33 a.m., I began the sequence. Open door 1, close it, whisper the line, then door 2, then door 3. With each repetition, the silence grew louder. The house felt like it was breathing, floorboards subtly expanding and contracting under my feet. The air thickening like syrup. When I finished the final whisper, I stood in the center of the hallway. No movement, no change. For a minute, I thought it was just a myth, until I noticed something strange. There was a 4th door. It wasn't there before. I know the layout of that hallway like the back of my hand. But now, at the end of the corridor, where there had only ever been wallpaper, stood a narrow, pale gray wooden door. It didn't match the others. No knob, just a keyhole. I stared. I didn't breathe. Then the knocking began. 3 slow taps. Hollow. From the wrong side of the wall. Sometimes the space around us folds, not metaphorically. I should have left. I should have burned the page and walked away. But I couldn't. Not because of curiosity, but because I had already let it in by reading. That's the catch. The ritual starts not when you do it, but when you understand it. I opened the door. There was no room, just a black corridor with no end. No sound, no floor. My flashlight refused to penetrate more than 2 feet. But there was movement, something brushing just beyond the threshold. Then, a face. It was mine. Mouth open, eyes bloodshot, lips twitching as if mid-scream, though no sound came out. Then the face turned, not like a person turns, like a picture being dragged across static. The body followed slowly, disjointed, like joints didn't quite know where to go. I slammed the door. Some things inside SCP react not to light, but to names. I tried to leave the house immediately. The original doors were gone. I spent what felt like 6 hours pacing in a triangle that always returned me to that 4th door. I tore through drywall, shattered windows that led to blackness, screamed until my throat bled. Nothing worked. Eventually, the 4th door opened again. No knocking, just creaking. This time, it revealed the original hallway. Nothing had changed, except now, my camera footage was gone, wiped mid-recording, and there were 3 pages added to the journal in my backpack. Rituals I hadn't seen before. I ran the hell out of that place. Drove for 2 hours in a direction I didn't choose. The sun rose behind me, wrong side. I was disoriented for days. And then I noticed I hadn't spoken since that night. Couldn't, not a word. My throat wasn't damaged, my brain was fine, but the words themselves wouldn't form, as if something had taken my right to express sound. Some Foundation staff have reported cases of selective verbal amnesia after contact with anomalous glyphs. They gave the phenomenon a name: cognitophysical lockout syndrome, CPS. Rare, mostly theoretical, but I was living it. When I handed the page to a researcher friend to examine, he glanced at it, just once, and vomited instantly. He claimed he saw a door where the ink was. That night, he vanished. His car was found parked outside a dead-end alley. The street cameras showed him walking toward a brick wall, and never emerging. Some things aren't found, they're sent. That's when I realized, this ritual doesn't make doors. It recruits them. And the more people who learn how it works, the more it replicates. So if you're still listening, if you're still trying to understand what I'm telling you, ask yourself this. Has there been a door in your house that you've never used? They found my voice in someone else's mouth. 2 weeks after the first ritual, I received a package. No return address, no postmark, just a plain manila envelope containing a cassette tape and a single yellowed photograph. The tape was unmarked. The photo showed a grave with no headstone, just teeth. Human teeth, arranged in a tight spiral, partially buried in wet soil. I played the tape in a secure Foundation audio booth. Static, then breathing, then something even worse, my voice. My exact voice, describing a ritual I had never spoken aloud, step by step. That voice wasn't recorded by me. It was recorded of me. Some things don't record sound, they harvest it. The journal listed this one as, to hear what should be forgotten. It was written in a different hand than the first ritual. Sharper strokes, more erratic spacing. There was blood on the page, dry, flaked, but unmistakable. This ritual had been tested violently. Here were the instructions. Find a graveyard at least 100 years old. Locate a burial plot with no marker or name. Dig until you find something not native to the earth, specifically teeth. Whisper your greatest secret into the soil. Cover it back up and leave a tooth of your own. Return in 3 days. A note at the bottom simply read, if done correctly, it will whisper back, I shouldn't have done it. But silence does things to the mind. Losing your voice is like losing shape. You start to forget the texture of thought. Some anomalies don't kill the body, they unmake identity. I chose an abandoned cemetery near. It had flooded decades ago. Most markers were unreadable. One grave sat at the base of a weeping willow, half consumed by roots. I felt drawn to it, not by instinct, but by pressure, as if something beneath was pulling upward. Digging felt wrong from the start. The earth moved too easily, like it was eager. I found a cluster of human teeth about 2 feet down, arranged in a perfect circle. Enamels still wet. My hands trembled as I leaned in and whispered something I had never told another soul. Then I plucked out my left canine with pliers. Blood filled my mouth. I spat it onto the roots, dropped the tooth into the pit, and covered it up. Pain is a form of invitation, especially in ritual contexts. The next 3 nights, I didn't sleep. I heard voices in the sink, in my dreams, in the hollow between words in radio static. They weren't saying anything clear, just a kind of wet murmuring. My ears bled the morning of the 3rd day. When I returned to the grave, nothing had changed, except for one thing. A tooth was missing. Not mine, the spirals. I bent down, listening. The soil moved. Then I heard it, my own voice, soft, like breath inside my ear. But it wasn't repeating my secret. It was telling me other people's. Whispers of experiments, hidden SCP projects, the names of missing researchers. It spoke for exactly 33 seconds. I counted. Then it said something that stopped my heart. You know the door, but do you know who came through? Some Foundation records mention autonomous vocal phenomena, usually in extinct dialects. The whispers didn't stop when I left. They got closer. I'd catch them just behind my shoulder when I turned corners. My apartment lights flickered in response to certain sentences. My dreams bled into waking hours. Then, one night, I woke to find bloody teeth arranged around my bed in a spiral. 12 of them, human, none of them mine. That was the first night I saw the figure. Pale, barefoot, mouth stitched closed. Its gums bled freely, trailing onto the floor, but the sound, that damn whisper, was still coming from it. I turned to run, but slipped, landed in the center of the spiral, and for one moment, I could hear everything. Some rituals aren't meant to be completed, only begun. I woke up hours later with a sheet of paper in my hand. Another page from the journal. This one had no title, just teeth sketched into the margin. They were open, smiling. From that day forward, I began hearing things before they happened. Phrases in conversations, warnings from intercoms, calls for help in the voices of people I hadn't met yet. The whispering follows me, not constantly, just when I'm about to cross a line, like something guiding me deeper. The worst part, I think I left something behind in that grave. And it's learning how to speak. Some things aren't meant to be unearthed, they dig their way out. Names have power, you already know that, but I don't mean the kind we give each other, I mean the ones beneath those. The names that exist without language. The ones that were assigned before memory, before structure, before the first instance of self-awareness. And some rituals, it turns out, help you remember those names. This one was labeled simply, "To know what knows you." The journal didn't offer warnings. No consequences listed, no side effects, just a flat statement under the ritual instructions. Once known, it knows you in return. The ritual was deceptively simple. At dusk, find a mirror that has never reflected another person before. Light a candle using a flame from an old source, no lighters. Use something ancestral, flint, coals, a sacred fire. Stand alone, stare into your own eyes. Repeat the phrase 7 times. What I am hides what I was. Show me what remembers. Do not break eye contact. If successful, you will see your true name written behind your reflection. It sounded like nonsense, but after what I'd seen, I knew better. Some anomalies don't create new phenomena, they reveal what was hidden beneath the rules we already follow. I tracked down an old ceremonial mirror stored in the vaults of Site 89. Used once for testing SCP. It was never used again. Its last recorded entry stated it caused severe ontological distortion during indirect observation. Perfect. I brought it to an abandoned containment unit. Just before dusk, lit the candle using an old match from a 1939 ration kit. The flame danced unnaturally, leaning toward the mirror like a moth trying to return home. I stared, repeated the phrase. The mirror stayed still for the first 6 repetitions. But on the 7th, my pupils dilated until my eyes were black. Not from light, from absence. The reflection shimmered, and then I saw it. Carved into the glass behind my mirrored self, etched in what looked like rusted bone, was a name. It wasn't pronounceable, it wasn't readable, it was a shape more than a word, a folded loop of thought. A feeling pressed into reality like a thumbprint in wet clay. Seeing it made my chest tighten. My reflection smiled, but I hadn't moved. Language-based SCP anomalies sometimes induce reflexive self-recognition in Class D personnel. I stumbled back, the candle went out, but the mirror didn't go dark, because the reflection didn't vanish. It stayed there, watching me, not mimicking, not echoing, just waiting. Some truths don't free you, they stalk you. I covered the mirror, locked it in containment, but the name, whatever I saw, was now inside my head. I can't write it down. I've tried. The letters reshape themselves into circles, spirals, something like veins or roots. And I started hearing it. Not aloud, not even in thought. Deeper, in the rhythm of engines. In the clicks of hard drives spinning up. My own breathing synced to it once. And I passed out for 3 hours. Then the dreams changed. Not nightmares. Those I could handle. These were visits. A version of myself. Walking through a space I didn't recognize. Wearing different clothes. Speaking a language I didn't know but understood perfectly. Every time, I got closer to seeing the door from the first ritual again. Some senior researchers argue that identity itself is a mimetic structure. I started slipping, calling people by names they didn't know, recognizing places I'd never been. One day, I introduced myself to a guard using the name I saw in the mirror. He froze. His pupils dilated. Then he whispered, "That's not a name. That's a recall code." He collapsed seconds later. The Foundation classified it as a severe psychotic event. He was transferred to SITE 19's Psych-Evil wing. I tried to follow up. His file was already sealed when I checked the next day. Deceased due to acute mimetic failure. They left out the part where his mouth was full of mirror shards when they found him. Somehow, that name activates something, and I'm not the only one who's learned it. A note appeared in my quarters the next day. Handwritten, no security breach detected. It simply read, "We remember you too. Some things aren't taught, they awaken." I'm not sure who I am anymore. Not in the metaphysical sense, I mean literally. There are moments I forget what my Foundation ID looks like. My access card stops working for hours at a time. People I've worked with for years don't recognize me, like I've slipped a few inches left of the person I was. So ask yourself, when was the last time you looked in a mirror and saw yourself blink before you did? The mirror changed me, not metaphorically, structurally. I went to medical for a scan after another blackout. Court, MRI, and a bio-ontological diagnostic reserved for high-risk SCP personnel. They found something. A small cluster of neural filaments, coiled in a spiral pattern, had appeared near my thalamus. Not a tumor, not biological, not explainable. They called it non-protein coding structure of unknown origin. I'd seen that spiral before. In the graveyard, in the teeth, in the journal. And I wasn't the only one. Some SCP phenomena don't spread through contact, but through comprehension. I started digging, off the record. Leveraged old contacts. Whispered to people in site cafeterias. In locked elevators. In disused containment wings with doors marked for demolition but never opened. Eventually, someone handed me a file fragment. Printed, burnt around the edges, from the inner archive vault at Site 17. It wasn't marked with a standard SCP designation. The title was SCP-RIT-CN, Ritual Contagion Hypothesis, Clearance Level 5. Underneath, it read, "Ritual events do not operate on thaumaturgic mechanics alone. They follow structures, information structures, language, perception, sequence. When a ritual is successfully executed, it writes itself into the subject's neurocognitive map and seeks propagation. In short, rituals can become mimetic viruses. Not all anomalous rituals are supernatural. Some are parasitic behaviors." The document mentioned 5 known rituals, though it never named them. It referred to them by glyphs: a spiral, a keyhole, a mouth, an hourglass, and an empty bowl. I'd already performed 3. Some SCP designations exist only in fragmented clearance layers, what we call ghost files. It went on to list certain behaviors linked to those infected by ritual knowledge. Disorientation, identity instability, dream recursion, perception of double time, events happening twice, recurring doors that appear where none existed. The worst part, a section labeled Vectors of Spread, included one word that made my chest hollow out. Narration. That means this recording you're listening to, this story, could be a vector. Some containment breaches don't happen in the real world. They happen in understanding. I tried to delete my recordings. Couldn't. Tried to burn the journal. It regenerated. Once, I threw it into an incinerator. 2 days later, I found it back in my quarters. Wet with condensation, pages curled from heat but intact. The cover had changed. It now bore a single word. Listen. I confronted a Level 4 memetics researcher. He didn't blink when I said, "Ritual contagion." Just asked which ones I'd done. When I told him, he nodded once and handed me a thumb drive. Inside, a single video file. No metadata, 17 seconds long. It showed a darkened Foundation interview room. A man sat alone, hunched over the table. Me, but older, scarred, eyes sunken. He looked into the camera and said, "Don't complete the 5th ritual. If you do, it becomes aware of you. Not just what you did, who you are." Then the footage looped, only this time, he whispered something else, barely audible. My real name. The one I saw in the mirror. The one I hadn't told anyone. Some anomalies don't break space. They unmake continuity. I ran, didn't know where. I drove 6 hours into dead zones, places off the Foundation grid. Places where surveillance fades and signals die. That's when I saw the 5th symbol. Etched into the glass of my rearview mirror, an empty bowl. Drawn in ash. I wasn't done, and it wasn't going to let me stop. Not now. Some things we study, others study us back. You need to understand something. The more you know, the more real it becomes. The rituals aren't spells, they're scripts, and once a story begins to write itself, it doesn't stop. It doesn't care about logic or order or the natural world. It just completes itself, with or without you. That's what the journal meant. Rituals that always complete themselves. So if you've listened this far, you're already inside it. Welcome. Time isn't stable. We pretend it is. Wear watches. Follow clocks. Draw little rectangles on calendars to trap it. But that's like trying to weigh smoke. The 4th ritual showed me that time isn't linear, or cyclical, or even real. It's persuasive, and I was about to be convinced. The ritual was titled, "To Witness the Hour That Should Not Be." It required an object I thought would be impossible to find. An antique clock recovered from a failed SCP containment incident. Model description, unclear. Hand carved from untreated pine. Brass inner mechanics. Ticking noise that doesn't match observable motion. The journal claimed it was tied to SCP, the redacted number blurred beneath an oily thumbprint. I tracked it to an auxiliary vault beneath SITE-83's Temporal Anomalies Division, where I posed as a tech reclassifier. They handed it to me in a lead-lined case. The Foundation didn't know what it did. They just knew it made junior staff lose time. Literally. Some SCP anomalies are time-neutral but cognitively biased. They affect what the mind believes happened, not what did. The instructions were precise. Set the clock to 11:59 p.m. Turn it backward to 11:33 p.m. Wait until the second hand begins to stutter. Close your eyes and breathe exactly 11 times. Open your eyes and observe. Do not attempt to correct the time. It was specific about the warnings. Do not use in a building with more than one floor. Do not perform near windows. Do not look into mirrors for 24 hours following the ritual. I ignored the last one. The moment I turned the hands backward, the clock made a sound like bones grinding underwater. The air shifted. I swear I felt gravity flex, like a weight lifted from the top of my spine and replaced at my ankles. I breathed slowly, 11 in, 11 out. Then the ticking stopped. And outside my window, it was morning, but the sun was in the north. And it wasn't moving. Some time anomalies exhibit orbital discontinuities. Solar placement fails to follow predictable celestial paths. I looked back at the clock. It now read 13:13. That time doesn't exist, not even on a 24-hour military scale. But the clock was still ticking. I blinked. The room changed. The walls stretched. Not longer. Just deeper, as if someone had added layers to the drywall that only existed when you weren't looking. My desk walked subtly. Still wood. But older. The coffee was steaming again, even though I hadn't made any. And I was no longer alone. There was a second version of me standing by the door. He looked older, gaunter, had a stitched scar under one eye that I didn't remember getting. He turned and looked at me with such clarity, such sadness, that I dropped the clock. It didn't shatter, it split, like a fruit too ripe to contain itself. Inside, instead of gears, were tiny folded pages. I couldn't read the ink. They shifted every time I tried to focus. But I caught one sentence just before the symbols rearranged. What time is it where you were? Temporal SCPs often create subjective anchor loops, causing individuals to experience split-time trauma or self-synchronization instability. The lights flickered. My reflection in the mirror didn't move when I did. I left the room and found myself in a hallway that didn't belong to any Foundation site I knew. The signs were in English, but the words were reversed, mirrored. Every time I looked away, they changed. Restroom became mort reset. Authorized personnel only became only personalized author. I wandered until I found the stairwell. It went down forever. At each landing was a different date. 1972, 2039, 1821. One step forward, and your bones remembered centuries. One step back, and your skin wept salt water like it had been pulled from the womb. Some rituals are time-locked. Others simply make you unlocked. I don't remember how I got out. I think I didn't. I have memories now that aren't mine. I know secrets I couldn't have read. And when I speak, sometimes my voice lags a half second behind my own words. People notice. They don't say anything, but I can see it in their eyes. The Foundation's logs show that I signed out the clock for 90 minutes. My watch says 90 minutes passed, but my phone battery dropped 42%. And the security footage shows me leaving the room 3 times, wearing 3 different shirts. I only brought one. Some things inside the Foundation don't contain anomalies. They are test runs for something worse. That night, I woke up at 1:13 p.m. Again, my own breathing sounded like it was coming from another room. There was a knock at my door. 3 slow taps. The same rhythm as the first ritual. But when I opened the door, it was me. Again, this version looked like he had just seen something. He opened his mouth, but no sound came, just a slow, ticking breath. And then he crumbled into ash. In his place was a note. 1 sentence, written in the spiral pattern. It read, "The hour comes when you cannot leave it behind." I no longer trust the time on my devices. I don't even know if this is the first time I'm telling you this. If it feels familiar, if your lights flickered while listening, maybe you've done it too. I started hearing another voice in my recordings. It wasn't an echo. It wasn't an overlay. It was something else, buried beneath the waveform. Like something under my voice. Speaking at the same time I was. But with words I hadn't said. The first time, I dismissed it as audio corruption. The second time, I scrubbed every second of the clip and heard it whisper, "You're not telling the story. I am." That was when I knew I wasn't alone anymore. Some SCP anomalies induce involuntary dual consciousness states, commonly misdiagnosed as auditory hallucinations. It started small. I'd walk into a room and forget why I was there. But only in mirrors did I look surprised. Sometimes I'd catch myself in the reflection mouthing words I hadn't spoken yet. They weren't random, either. I began writing them down. When I read them later, they were instructions, warnings. Then objects began to move. Not in front of me. Not blatantly, but recordings showed items shifting an inch or 2 between cuts. One frame, my coffee mug facing left. The next, facing right. A pen disappearing, only to reappear in a drawer I hadn't opened. And always, just as I noticed, the lights would flicker. My sleep became fractured. I would lie down, and the moment I closed my eyes, I'd hear a door creak open somewhere in the room. Sometimes it was followed by footsteps. Sometimes breathing. Once, I woke to find all my furniture pressed against the walls, as if something needed open space. Some rituals don't summon entities. They make space for them. I visited a neurospecialist under the guise of a memory trauma case. She ran an EEG. Mid-scan, she froze. Her voice dropped to a whisper as she stared at the screen. "You're running a secondary pattern. Like someone else is dreaming with you." That night, she was found dead in her office. Cyanosis. They said, no wounds, no toxins. But her audio logs were corrupted, with my voice whispering unintelligibly at the end. I hadn't been there. At least, I don't think I had. Some Foundation personnel experience cross-identity resonance after exposure to layered rituals. I tried to isolate myself in a clean room, no mirrors. No windows, no recording devices. I stayed there for 48 hours. On the 3rd day, the intercom crackled. No one else was on the channel. but I heard breathing. Then the voice said, "You left the door open. Now we both get to speak." I screamed, ripped the intercom from the wall. But the sound didn't stop. It was inside me. I began to notice overlapping thoughts. I'd walk into a room with one intention, and find myself doing something else. Pouring salt in a circle. Tearing pages from a book I hadn't read. Speaking in a language I didn't know. Writing spirals into the corners of walls and ceilings. People avoided me. Colleagues stopped making eye contact. One researcher asked me, casually, if I'd ever worked at Site 13. I told him no. He looked confused, said, "But I saw your name in the logbook last week." I've never been to Site 13. At least, I hadn't. I logged into the database to search. My ID triggered a silent flag. Cross-site instance detected. A copy of my clearance file existed on SITE 13 servers, but with an older timestamp. And then it vanished mid-search. Rewritten in real time. I wasn't being followed. I was being mirrored. Some ritual outcomes include recursive identity loops, where the observer becomes the observed. Then came the playback. While reviewing the fourth ritual's footage, I heard something new, a voice layered beneath mine, counting backwards, slowly, deliberately. When it reached 0, my image on screen stopped moving, but the audio kept playing. It said, "This is where you end. This is where I begin." I haven't recorded anything since. At least, not intentionally. My system now contains dozens of video files I don't remember making. Most are of me, standing motionless, or whispering to no one, or sitting at my desk, carving patterns into my skin with the broken edge of a watch face. I checked the metadata. Each one is timestamped 1313. Every single one. Some anomalies leave no mark on the world, only on the self. I'm not the only one in here anymore. I know that now. I feel the presence shift behind my eyes. A second pair of thoughts. Not louder, deeper, waiting. And now, when I dream, I don't see the rituals. I see a room, infinite in all directions, filled with doors, and they're all opening. If you're still listening, listen closely. Do you hear your voice echo in ways it shouldn't? Has your reflection ever smiled before you did? Because if so, you're not alone anymore, either. They call it the ritual of forgetting. But that's not its real name. The journal listed it last, hidden in a fold between pages that weren't numbered. There was no title, no preamble, just a single phrase scrawled across the top in shaking red ink. The meal must be prepared by hand. No drawings, no warnings, just a brutal list of instructions that read like a recipe. And it's the only ritual I hesitated to read more than once. Because every ingredient it called for shouldn't exist. One measure of salt from a dream you can no longer recall. One bone fragment from something that remembers you. An edible plant that only grows where you've forgotten being. A spoon made of your own memory. A dish served at your final meal, even if it hasn't happened yet. And above all, the food must be consumed alone. Some SCP rituals manipulate causality not by force, but by narrative alignment. They become true only if believed. The salt came first. I woke one night choking, sat up, coughing, and spat out a small crystal. Pink and grainy. It smelled like ozone and grief. The journal page had changed. The salt was now crossed off. I didn't remember anything about the dream I had before that. I still don't. The bone came next. It was in a sealed envelope in my Foundation mailbox. No return address. Just my name and the symbol of a fork with an eye in the middle. I had it tested. No DNA match on record. But it had microscopic etchings resembling fingerprints. But they weren't mine. They were mirrored versions of mine. From someone who knew me. Down to the cellular level. Someone I might have forgotten. Then came the plant. I found it growing inside a locked drawer of my office, one I hadn't opened in months. The roots were folded like paper cranes. The leaves bled black when cut. A post-it note was stuck to the stem. "You've been here before. You just never looked down." I went home and opened my fridge. There, waiting on the middle shelf, was a porcelain plate with a dome lid. I didn't put it there. I live alone. No one had access. The timestamp on my smart fridge showed the door hadn't opened for 9 hours. And yet, there it was. A dish I recognized, but couldn't place. Some kind of stew, thick, dark, meatless, smelled like copper and honey and ashes. I lifted the lid. Underneath was a note burned into the glaze. Feed yourself to forget. Feed yourself to become. Some Foundation anomalies refer to themselves as hungry memory engines. They process identity through ritual ingestion. I brought the meal to my desk. Sat down. I knew if I ate it, I'd lose something. But what? A person, a place, a name, or worse, a part of myself I never remember was gone. I tried to resist, but my hands moved on their own. One bite, then another. I chewed, swallowed, and with each mouthful, something inside me uncoiled, like a rope untying around my ribs. I cried, I laughed, I screamed, and I forgot. I forgot who I used to love. I forgot the sound of my brother's voice. I forgot the shape of my home. And I couldn't stop eating. Some things don't erase memory, they consume what memory connects to. When the plate was empty, I blinked, and my apartment had changed. The walls were blank, the photographs gone, my clothes replaced with unfamiliar uniforms. There was no mail, no books, no toothbrush, only a calendar with one date circled. Today. The journal was on my desk again, open to a new page. The fifth symbol was drawn in blood, a bowl with 3 teeth inside. Below it was one sentence. You served yourself, now serve us. I tried to call for help. My Foundation contact list was empty. Every message I sent bounced back. My keycard was deactivated. I was no longer in the system. I didn't even know which site I was in anymore. The elevator buttons had no numbers. Just symbols, spirals, keys, mouths, clocks, and that damn bowl. No matter which I pressed, the doors opened to the same hallway. Over and over and over. Time didn't pass, not like it should. The only thing that changed were the people I began to forget. One by one, I scrolled through old footage. Friends, colleagues, my own supervisor, faces I knew I should know, but couldn't place. Their voices distorted into static. Their names collapsed into symbols. It wasn't just memory loss. It was erasure. They weren't just gone. I wrote in my notes. They were never part of the world to begin with. That's what this ritual does. Not erase you, rewrite you. And now, I can't remember if I'm the one who started this recording, or the one who inherited it. After the 5th ritual, I stopped trusting anything that didn't bleed. My own thoughts weren't mine anymore. Not fully. Some arrived fully formed in handwriting I didn't recognize. Some arrived in dreams. Others, in the mouths of people I swear I'd never met. They would say phrases I was about to say, word for word, and then vanish into crowd noise like skipped frames in reality. I stopped trying to undo it. Instead, I started digging into the Foundation's older, deeper archives, places you only access with clearance that doesn't exist in paper form. One of those was a theoretical research cache called SCP Sigma, Ritual Engine Theory. It's not a real designation. That's the point. It exists in the corners, referenced in broken links, footnotes, partial PDFs that vanish after opening. But if you piece it together, you start to see a structure underneath all the rituals we've classified as separate anomalies. They're not separate. They're connected. By purpose, by function, by intention. Some SCP entities don't operate as individuals, but as nodes in a larger pattern. A network of thought. Here's what I found. Every major ritual recorded in the past 40 years, at least those confirmed to have anomalous effects, aligns with a set of core conceptual anchors. Permission, the door without a room. Sacrifice, the whispering teeth. Recognition, the name ritual. Distortion, the clock ritual. Erasure, the meal you serve yourself. Each corresponds to a symbolic glyph found in deep anomalous history, etched in Paleolithic cave systems. Buried in pre-Sumerian ruins. even encoded into the DNA of certain SCP specimens like SCP-073 and SCP. In short, they are rituals of initiation. A sequence. Something is being built. Some senior memetics researchers believe that anomalous knowledge behaves like an invasive species. It does not seek truth, only replication. But it's not just replication, it's convergence. One note, written by an anonymous researcher, only signed L5, Nix, reads: if the rituals are completed in the right sequence, with the right vector, a prepared mind, the ritual engine activates. We don't know what it builds, only that it requires consensus hallucination, belief shared across multiple consciousnesses. That's what this is, not just a transmission, a blueprint for belief, one so powerful it changes the material world. Slowly, layer by layer, person by person, me, you, anyone who listens, watches, repeats, or understands. I found more. A hidden link buried in a corrupted document led to a containment site schematic, SITE-88X. A location scrubbed from every map. No coordinates, no paper trail, but the structure was unmistakable. A ritual containment matrix. 5 concentric rings, each corresponding to one of the 5 rituals. In the center, a chamber labeled only as Origin Core. I'm not supposed to know this. The next day, someone accessed my console remotely, left a single line on my monitor. You are not cleared to remember. I lost 7 hours that day. No logins, no messages, just the clock jumping forward and my hands shaking with blood I hadn't noticed. Some cognitohazards don't infect perception, they hollow it. Like rot in a tree. You look fine until you collapse. Since then, I've seen the glyphs carved into public places. On subway tiles, on the back of elevator panels, burned into the bark of a tree near my childhood home. This is spreading, and the Foundation can't contain it because the containment protocols rely on observation. But this thrives in the unseen. One last file confirmed it for me. An audio log from 1994. Low-level researcher, panicked, repeating, it's building itself. I thought we were performing rituals to understand the anomalies. But they were teaching us. They've been waiting for someone to complete all 5. Then gunshots. Then silence. Then static. Then, my voice. Saying my name. Not the name I go by. The one from the mirror. That's when I knew. The rituals aren't the infection. We are. Some anomalies don't wait for discovery. They create their own discoverers. So if you've followed the logic, if you've tracked every glyph, every layer, every substitution, every bleeding thought, ask yourself, what's the last thing you did because you wanted to? And what's the last thing you did because something else already decided? I told myself I'd only try one. Just the first ritual, just to confirm it was real. Just to feel something other than confusion and helplessness and that constant pressure in the base of my skull like something knocking from the inside. So I picked the simplest. The door without a room. The instructions were etched into memory by then. I didn't even need to check the journal. 3 doors. 3:33 a.m. One phrase, whispered 3 times. I brought nothing with me except a flashlight and the foolish idea that curiosity could be controlled. Some anomalies don't manipulate you directly, they just leave the door open and wait. The safe house was an old Foundation observation unit long since abandoned after a failed SCP experiment involving spatial bleed. We'd sealed it, tagged it, do not enter, and moved on. It was perfect. The hallway had 3 doors. One led to a bedroom, another to a bathroom, and the third, I don't even remember anymore. Maybe I never did. Maybe that's the point. I checked my watch. 3 hours 32 minutes and 41 seconds. I stood dead center. At 3:33, I began. Door 1, open, close, whisper the line. Door 2, open, close, whisper again. Door 3, sane. The moment the third door clicked shut, the air tightened. That's the only way I can describe it. It felt like standing inside someone else's breath. I stood still, as instructed, and the door appeared. Not a creaking, not a shimmer. It was just there, like it had always been. Taller than the others, narrower, faded wood, no knob, just a small iron keyhole, and that feeling of being watched from the other side. I hesitated, just for a second, and then the knocking started. Slow, deliberate, 3 times. I didn't want to open it, but my hand moved, and when I did, I blacked out. Some Foundation personnel report blackout events during ritual anomalies. Memory splice confirmed by timestamp anomalies and cognitive drift. I woke up hours later. My flashlight was on, the house was cold, everything looked untouched, but my hands were filthy, my nails, bloody, and there were 3 new pages in the journal, ones I had no memory of reading, let alone writing. Each was labeled with the next 3 rituals I just discovered in the weeks following. I'd started a chain, and worse, I hadn't come back alone. At first, it was just a whisper, behind the walls, then behind my eyes. A name kept surfacing in my thoughts. Not mine, not human, something else, a sound that vibrated in the bones. Not the ears, like a low hum wrapped in ancient regret. Some ritual effects are retroactive, initiating patterns before you're aware they began. I started recording everything, voice memos, journal entries, even sleep talking. That's when I discovered something impossible. During one of my own recordings, I heard my voice describe the first ritual in full, before I ever performed it. Every word, perfect, exact, but it wasn't me speaking, because I listened to the tone, the rhythm, the accent, and it was just slightly wrong, like hearing a twin try to imitate you. So I ran a spectrographic analysis on the voice. Result: 97% match to my biometric vocal signature, 3% unknown deviation. What's worse, the file's timestamp was from 2 days before I performed the ritual. Some anomalies loop causality. The ritual doesn't begin with action, it begins with awareness. I tried to quarantine the file, but every time I deleted it, it reappeared, renamed, resaved, spread across my system like mold. Eventually, I stopped trying, just listened, over and over, and on the 7th playback, something changed. The voice stopped halfway through the ritual description, and said, "You've done it now, we're through," and then silence. I haven't seen the door since, but I hear it, sometimes in the quiet between thoughts, sometimes in the pauses when people speak. A slow, rhythmic tap, 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 no direction, no source, just a knock that waits for permission. Some things don't need to enter the room, they just need you to look at the door. My dreams have changed again. They're structured now, architectural. I walk through corridors made of symbols, clocks embedded in walls, doors suspended upside down, bowls carved into ceilings. Every room I pass seems familiar, like a place I'll visit later, like a memory waiting to happen. That's the effect. The rituals don't work because you believe in them. They work because they believe in you. You're the altar, you're the container, you're the final step. So go ahead, keep listening. It only takes one, just one. I thought I was the only one. After the 5th ritual, I cut contact, burned everything that could track me, smashed my phone, corrupted my work terminal, shut off every broadcast frequency I'd ever used. I thought it might slow the spread. It didn't, because Site 13 started talking back. Some anomalies don't spread like viruses. They echo like songs. A colleague, one of the few I trusted, reached out via a private back channel only used during red-level breaches. No context, just one message. "You need to hear this." Attached was a 43-second audio file pulled from an internal Site 13 radio tower. Nothing should have been broadcasting. The station had been dormant since 2007, when a failed dimensional breach rendered half the site inaccessible. But this wasn't noise. It was chanting, rhythmic, wet, ancient. We ran it through linguistic filters. Nothing matched. Not Latin, not Greek, not Akkadian, not any of the reconstructed pre-Proto-Eurasian languages. Then one intern, some linguistics prodigy from Site 88, ran it through an extinct phoneme mapping program tied to SCP-140's chronology reconstruction. Result: Sumerian. And not just any Sumerian. It was a dialect associated with ritual funerary rites performed at ziggurats built over sacred wormholes. Yeah, that's a real sentence. And that was when I realized I'd heard it before. Not in a book, not in a class. In my dreams. Some SCPs don't just leave a signature, they install it. Like malware for the soul. The file wasn't just audio. It contained a data payload. Buried deep inside were layers of metadata pointing to classified Foundation coordinates. Not GPS, something older, something ritualistic. An arrangement of planetary positions. Dates that haven't happened yet. Names that no one alive remembers, but I recognized one. Mine. In the Sumerian form. From the mirror. Site-13 systems were trying to call me. Or, the thing I'm becoming. I tried contacting Site-13 directly. Deadline. All emergency portals disabled. Then, one night, the site pinged my secure Foundation beacon from my personal signal. Except I'd destroyed that beacon 2 weeks earlier. And Site-13 has been sealed since 2016 due to irreversible topological collapse. Officially, it doesn't exist anymore, yet the message was clear. Just 3 words. Ritual, complete, forward. Some containment sites never truly shut down. They become rituals themselves, places that remember what they once were. I pulled every record I could from the Site-13 terminal archives. Most were corrupted, symbols where words should be. But there were fragments, logs from researchers muttering in ancient tongues. Descriptions of glyphs appearing in bathroom tiles. Windows fogging with phrases written from the inside. Bones found growing in light fixtures. And a common thread, broadcasts. Unscheduled, untraceable, always in languages no one admitted to knowing, but that everyone recognized. As if the rituals themselves had trained us. I visited the last known perimeter checkpoint around Site-13, a collapsed forest access road. Partially paved, overgrown. The air there felt still. Not silent, still. Like the world was holding its breath. I brought a portable receiver. Tuned to 93.9 FM, the frequency from the Site-13 logs. Static at first. Then, breathing. Then chanting. Then, my voice. Saying the exact phrase from Ritual 3. What I am hides what I was. Show me what remembers. Some Foundation frequencies are locked for a reason. They transmit more than sound. They carry invitation. I left immediately, but the signal followed, not just on my radio, on devices that didn't even have receivers. My microwave beeped in patterns. My wristwatch ticked out Morse code. My car's engine revved rhythmically when idle, all matching the cadence of that chant. That night, I received a text from a number I'd never seen. It simply read, "Thank you for remembering. Your voice completes the circle." Then silence. My voice began to slip again. In recordings, I sound younger, or older, or like someone else entirely. I don't remember saying things I clearly recorded. My vocal patterns match broadcasts I never made. Some rituals don't use incantations. They use you. And now, as I'm recording this, I hear the radio again. Not from a device. From the walls. The chant growing louder. More voices joining. One of them, my own. But not in Sumerian. In something older. In something beneath language. They're calling me back to Site-13. I don't know what's inside. I don't know if I ever left. But I know this. If the next voice you hear sounds like mine, ask yourself, did you press play? Or did something else just respond? They call them RZs, Ritual Containment Zones. Officially, the Foundation doesn't acknowledge the term. Ask any site director, and they'll tell you no such designation exists. But the term does show up, encrypted in old project logs. Deep in redacted incident reports. And whispered in transfer briefings between Level 5 personnel. That's where the rituals live when they're no longer anomalies, when they've become locations. Some SCP phenomena don't reside inside rooms. The room becomes the anomaly. I first found reference to RZ-03 after my Site-13 signal incident. I pulled a redacted map of containment silos and noticed something strange: 5 zones arranged in a spiral, each located in a geographic region historically tied to lost time, mass disappearances, or unexplained architectural ruins. All 5 were still active. All 5 were Foundation black zones. Each one matched a ritual. RZ-01 in northern Kazakhstan, surrounding a buried door carved into stone, with no chamber behind it. RZ-02 in South Sudan, where villagers report hearing secrets spoken from the soil at dusk. RZ-03 in Canada's Northwest Territories, built around a frozen lake shaped exactly like the name glyph from the mirror ritual. RZ-04 in a derelict research station in Siberia, where time runs backwards for 4 minutes every day at 13:13. RZ-05, missing. Coordinates scrubbed. That last one scared me most. Not because it was gone. Because it wasn't ever listed to begin with. It had been added manually to the spiral, recently, by someone still inside the Foundation. Containment zones designated RZ function as ritual circuits, sites aligned through unknown geomantic laws that facilitate anomalous resonance. I gained access to RZ-03 through an expired clearance used by a researcher listed MIA since 2018. His final report was labeled "Subject beginning recursion." Inside the zone, the temperature dropped suddenly. I wore 3 layers. Still felt like I was underwater. The landscape was symmetrical, unnaturally so. Trees were spaced in ratios matching the Fibonacci sequence. Birds didn't chirp. The wind was present, but didn't move anything. At the center of the lake, there was a structure, a mirrored monolith, 20 meters tall, partially submerged. Carved across its surface were 5 symbols: the door, the mouth, the eye, the clock, the bowl, all connected by curved grooves, like a circuitry diagram. I didn't bring the journal with me, but I didn't need to. I knew what I was looking at. A ritual engine, one not made by us, but for us. Or maybe, from us. Some SCP systems are not built for control, they are expressions of intent. Interfaces for unknown minds. The deeper I explored the zone, the more I realized something was missing: time. I couldn't feel it. My watch stopped. My thoughts no longer followed linear order. At one point, I found myself walking backwards without noticing. The audio from my field recorder reversed spontaneously. My speech looped mid-sentence. And then I heard the phrase again. "You are part of the pattern. You must complete what was begun." I fled. But when I returned to Site 08, they already knew. I was greeted at the gate by 2 agents I'd never seen. No names, no patches. They told me calmly that I had been marked ritual positive. I was to be observed, logged, measured. I asked how they knew. They said, "The zone called you. That's how it begins." Some ritual activity doesn't require performance, it requires recognition. Awareness alone is enough to trigger containment flags. Since then, Foundation terminals intermittently deny my login. My memetic stability tests come back indeterminate. My room shifts overnight. I find scratches on the walls shaped like spirals. My blood work shows proteins I've never encountered. And my journal, it keeps writing itself. New pages, new glyphs, diagrams I understand without reading. One page labeled RZ-05 appeared yesterday. It depicted a room, a familiar room, my room, marked as Origin Core. That's when I knew I wasn't studying the ritual containment zones. I am one, a living node in the pattern. Designed, prepared, activated. The last step isn't about performing a ritual. It's about being the ritual. That's why no one comes back from RZ-05. Because once it recognizes you, you're already part of it. Some SCP containment units are mislabeled. They're not meant to hold an entity. They're meant to grow one. And if you followed me this far, if you've understood any of this, maybe you are too. There was always a 6th. Even before I saw it written, I felt it, like a blind spot in memory. A shape behind your head you can never quite turn to face. The journal never mentioned it directly. No page, no label, no index. But it was there, waiting in the folds, a kind of negative space between the rituals. I didn't find it. It found me. Some knowledge is erased not to protect people from danger, but to protect danger from us. It started with burn marks. Pages in the journal began crisping at the corners, slowly curling in. Not from flame but from absence. The ink dissolved, but only from one specific passage that had once mentioned something called the final mirror. I tried photographing the page. The photo came out blank. I scanned it. The file corrupted. I drew the glyph from memory. But every time I tried, my hand trembled. The lines came out wrong, looping where they should have been straight, crossing where they shouldn't. One night, I woke up to find the symbol perfectly drawn on my chest, in ink I didn't own. That's when I remembered the voice on the recording. "You've done it now. We're through." It wasn't a warning. It was a completion marker. I'd already triggered the 6th ritual, without realizing it. That's what no one tells you. Some rituals don't need fire or words or blood. Just completion of sequence. The moment I performed the 5th, the 6th began. Certain SCPs operate on recursive logic loops, final steps that rewrite their own initiation criteria. I scoured Foundation records, scrubbing the deepest backdoor databases I could find. Only once did the 6th ritual surface. A purged file fragment from 1999, titled SCP-001-X, Event, Redacted, Subject, Ritual 6, The Offering Beyond Form. There were no steps, no ingredients, just a list of consequences. Loss of temporal continuity, transspatial identity fragmentation, removal from observable reality, return in altered state, if at all. The final line of the file was burned into my brain. This ritual was erased not by us. We only found the ashes. Some Foundation designations are not entries. They are eulogies. After that, I stopped trying to document. I turned off every device, burned every note, deleted every backup. It didn't matter, because the ritual continued, through me. I began to see myself in places I'd never been. Security footage from Site-11 showed a figure matching my profile entering the restricted wing. But I'd never been to Site-11. Yet the timestamp matched a 3-hour blackout I experienced that same week. In the footage, I looked directly into the camera and smiled. Colleagues I'd never met greeted me by name. One of them said, "You were different last time." I asked what they meant. They said, "Last time, your eyes were wrong. They were closed. Some ritual outcomes are not observable. They are retroactive. They rewrite presence." Eventually, I stopped sleeping. Couldn't risk dreaming. That's where it waits. Not in a space or a room, but in moments that no longer exist. You don't remember starting the 6th ritual. You remember around it. The way a missing tooth still feels like it's there. Then one morning, I woke up to find myself already standing at the window, looking out, not turning, not blinking. When I moved to speak, the version of me said quietly, "You didn't erase it. You're the backup." Then it disappeared. No smoke, no scream, just gone. That's when I understood. The 6th ritual is contagious across versions. Not people, versions. All the variations of you that could have existed, or already did. You do the rituals, and the you who didn't starts to fade. I've forgotten entire years of my life. Entire relationships. Pets I remember feeding but never naming. Houses I see in dreams that I never lived in. And in their place, pages. Always more pages. Some rituals do not require witnesses. They require only absence. The journal is almost full now. The last pages are blank. But I know what they contain. Because I've already written them. In another life. In another version. I think that's what the 6th ritual truly is. Not an ending. Not a summoning. A merging. A final folding of all the selves who tried to look too closely. The voices aren't just echoes anymore. They're alignments. They're getting louder. And they sound just like me. There's no pretending anymore. No rationalizing. No, maybe it's psychological. They know I know now. The Foundation. The things behind the rituals. The other versions of me. All of them. And they're not trying to stop me. They're waiting. Some rituals don't punish awareness. They require it. It began with silence. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that arrives. My devices, silent. My clocks, frozen. My own breath, delayed in my ears. As if echoing through water. That pressure behind my eyes pulsed in time with nothing. Not a heartbeat. Not a rhythm. Just expectation. I found a bowl on my doorstep. White porcelain. Empty. Smooth. But not clean. There were bite marks on the rim. Human. Mine. I never put it there. I never owned it. Inside was a folded piece of paper. Welcome home. I live alone. Or at least, I thought I did. Certain anomalies do not breach containment. They expand it, until containment becomes the world. At work, no one addressed me by name. Because I no longer had one. My ID badge was blank. My login profile, unknown entity, flagged for observation. The people who used to avoid me now ignored me entirely. Like they couldn't see me. Or, they saw through me. I passed 2 level 3s in the hallway. They were speaking in hushed tones. One said, "He's past 5. The other nodded. "Then he's not really here anymore." I asked what they meant. They looked startled, then terrified. Then one of them whispered, "We haven't said anything aloud in 12 minutes. And they walked away, mouths closed. I checked my security logs. My name is still listed, but marked with a timestamp labeled. Event start, Ritual 6A loop, Subject 01 origin trace. That's not a human designation. That's a ritual seed. I'm not on a watch list anymore. I'm on a blueprint. Some SCP events do not trigger when discovered. They trigger when you're ready to become part of them. Later that night, I came home to find the journal gone. In its place was a plate. Covered. Warm. A bite taken out of it. Still steaming. And next to it, another note. "You finished the bowl. Now finish the name." I looked in the mirror and saw someone else blink. Then I started receiving feedback. My own voice, echoing at random from speakers I hadn't touched. Not repeating old recordings, responding in real time. Asking me questions I hadn't asked yet. Answering thoughts I hadn't finished forming. They know I know. And worse, they know you do now too. Because this isn't just an infection of space, or sound, or time. It's narrative. This is what the Foundation missed. This is what they couldn't contain. A living ritual that spreads through understanding. That's why I'm recording this. Not to warn you. Not anymore. That was 5 rituals ago. Now, this is just the next step. Some entities don't need to breach the walls. They just need to be believed in. I hear footsteps in the hall at all hours. But they never knock. Not anymore. They don't need to. Because I opened the door. I cooked the meal. I whispered the name. I watched the clock. I bled for the grave. And I looked into the mirror long enough to recognize what looked back. I'm not resisting. Not because I can't. Because I'm not sure there's anyone left to do the resisting. Sometimes I hear people call my name in the distance. And I realize I don't remember how it sounds. Because that part of me was already served. And now, there's just one step left. I'm supposed to bring someone else. That's how it grows. Some rituals end not in silence, but in someone else saying, "Tell me more." So if you've listened this far, if you've stayed with me through this, then maybe that someone is you. Because the next ritual doesn't start in a journal. It starts in a question. What do you believe happened next? I never thought it would end like this. Not with a bang, not even with silence, but with a decision I was never meant to make. The 6th ritual wasn't the last step. I was. And now, if you're hearing this, if your lights dimmed halfway through, if your screen flickered, if the air around you feels just slightly off, it means you've been chosen. Or maybe, recruited. Because this doesn't end with me. It completes with you. Some anomalies don't survive because they're powerful. They survive because they find hosts who finish the story. They left me one final page. The journal, now sealed shut, has no more blank space. But on the back cover, etched in something bone deep, is a single phrase. This is not an ending. It's a relay. You're the next. The rituals need continuity, Memory passed hand to hand like fire in the dark. Not because they can't light themselves, but because they want to be seen. They want to be known. That's how they survive. That's how they grow. And now, it's your turn to choose. Will you look for the door? Will you whisper to the soil? Will you speak the name in glass? Will you turn the clock that lies? Will you eat the meal you've never tasted? Or will you do what I couldn't? Will you stop the chain? But know this, some SCP rituals don't continue because you believe in them. They continue because they believe in you. Maybe you think you can walk away. Turn this off. Forget it. Pretend it was fiction. But, can you be sure? Can you be sure the whispers you hear tonight aren't just echoes? Can you be sure your hallway doesn't have one extra door you never noticed? Can you be sure your name is really yours? They're watching now, waiting, not with hunger, with hope. Hope that you'll carry it forward, that you'll tell someone else, that you'll read this to another in a voice that is not quite your own. Because you see, the ritual completes itself. Even if you never mean to. Especially when you don't. Some things aren't passed down through words. They pass themselves. So here's what you'll have to do. Forget everything. Then remember what you were never told. Turn out the lights. Close your eyes. And wait. They're already here. They've always been here. And if you're very quiet, you might just hear the knock. 3 times. Slow. Final. Are you ready to open it? And now, it's quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't come from silence, but from something having finished. Like the final hum of a radio before it's switched off. Like the last breath in a dark room, after the story ends and the light fades. Maybe you're still sitting there. Maybe you paused. Maybe you walked away and came back, hoping the dread would settle. Or maybe you're still waiting, listening for one last sound. But the truth is, there's nothing more. You've heard everything I can say. Everything I was allowed to remember. Everything I could never forget. You've walked through doors with me. You've tasted memories. You've heard the rituals, felt them, even if just for a moment. And now, like me, you carry something you didn't ask for. Not a curse. Not a gift. A key to something deeper than fear. Older than truth. A place where stories don't end, they just change shape. So if things feel a little different now, if a shadow seems to move slower when you turn your head, if a voice lingers 1 second too long in your headphones, don't panic. That's just the pattern noticing you. It does that. It watches. It waits. And when it's ready, it opens the next door. But for now, just rest. You've heard enough for one night. Let the sound fade. Let your thoughts slow. Let the ritual pause here, just beneath your breath. We'll speak again soon. In another story. In another shape. In another self.